just by way of introduction, we've been working with Newham for the last couple of years through the COVID-19 pandemic response, providing evidence and insight to support that, and now we've been asked to have a look at the cost of living crisis as well. I think it's really important, before we get into the specifics of the data relating to cost of living, to recognise that this is a crisis following a previous crisis. So we're coming hot off the heels of the ongoing impact of the pandemic to a point where, you know, we're starting another type of crisis, which is inherently linked to the impact of the pandemic, but from a challenged baseline already.
I think you've gone on mute, Chris.
Sorry, I don't know what happened there. I didn't touch anything, but we'll keep our arms folded. Yeah, we know that Newham was one of the hardest hit local authorities within the country, which was, you know, born out of the existing baseline around poverty, and particularly deep poverty within the borough. You know, the government are quick to tell us that unemployment is going down and that poverty has sort of flattened out over the course of the last couple of parliaments, but actually when you look at deep poverty, that's increased quite significantly, and boroughs like Newham are particularly exposed to that, and particularly to in-work poverty. So, you know, you've got 50% of young people within Newham who are living within poverty, and the increase within those young people living within poverty are almost 100% in working families. So, you know, the idea that you get people into work and then they can get themselves out of poverty isn't really working for Newham as it was in the past. Newham has the second lowest disposable rate of disposable income within London at the moment, and that was true at the start of the pandemic. And we know through our research through the pandemic that Newham residents are more likely to be disproportionately impacted within that. So the pandemic itself, you know, and the economic system more generally, has been a driver of disproportionality and inequality. When you overlay that with issues around health, the second lowest level of life expectancy within London, high levels of childhood obesity, increasing numbers of people relying on food banks, it is pretty stark stuff already at the start of this crisis. And I think as we think about the crisis, it's important to note that the response from the government, whatever we hear over the next couple of days, is not going to be as significant as it was to COVID-19, because COVID-19 was quite an equal crisis. We were sort of all in it together. This will be more just diffuse and it's more complicated. So in the data that we're going to present now, we're going to try and tease out some of the factors that will drive the cost of living crisis and the inequality challenges that will be born out of that. So I'll hand over to Will, who's going to talk about some of the specifics, and then we'll just reflect on that at the end of that presentation.
Thanks, Chris. So what we're going to present to you today is a synopsis, really, of what is quite a detailed evidence base we brought together to sort of underpin this summit today. And I think it's really important that we share those slides with this group after the session today, because there's a lot of sort of detail that underpins this work. And I think the way we've approached this is looked at the sort of the. Oh, sorry. Can you see me now? Hopefully. So I think the important thing that we've tried to do through this work is to look at the layered factors and the layered factors that are sort of contributing to this cost of living crisis, because typically a lot of the analysis in relation to this tends to take one factor at a time. So, for example, it looks at food poverty, we look individually at fuel poverty as well, and then we look at individual factors like housing quality, energy efficiency, and those things. But when we actually layer these things together, we can see what the net impact is on residents on a monthly basis. So I think the thing to sort of just reinforce, to set the tone going into this, is that if we listen to government on a lot of this stuff, I think you'd be fooled into thinking that London was sort of relatively resilient to a lot of the cost of living crisis pressures in terms of things like average earnings, in terms of things like being in work and that sort of thing. But when we sort of look at all of these factors together, I think our argument and